Have you ever felt like life just pulled the rug out from under you? One day you're secure in your job, happy in your relationship, confident in who you are, and then suddenly, it all disappears. The promotion goes to someone else. Your partner walks out. Your reputation gets destroyed by rumors. Everything you worked for, everything you loved, everything that made you gone. If you're nodding right now, you're not alone. This crushing experience of loss is as old as humanity itself. But here's what's fascinating. Over 2,000 years ago, a former slave turned philosopher named Epictetus discovered something radical about why we suffer when we lose things. And his insight might completely change how you see every loss you've ever experienced. Epictetus didn't sugarcoat anything. He was brutally direct, which is probably why his teachings survived when so many others have been forgotten. Born as a slave in ancient Rome, he knew what it meant to own nothing, to have no control over his own body, to watch everything be taken away at someone else's whim. Yet somehow, this man who started with less than nothing became one of the most influential philosophers in history. How? Because he understood the truth that most of us spend our whole lives avoiding. Here's what Epictetus realized. The reason we suffer isn't because bad things happen to us. We suffer because we believe we own things that were never ours to begin with. Think about that for a second. Your job, your house, your relationships, even your own body. Epictetus would say none of these are truly yours. They're on loan, temporary, and the universe can call in that loan whenever it wants. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds depressing. How is this supposed to help me? But stick with me, because understanding this principle isn't about becoming some emotionless robot who doesn't care about anything. It's about finding a kind of freedom that can't be taken away, no matter what life throws at you. In the next few minutes, we're going to explore Epictetus' revolutionary teachings about what you actually control versus what you don't. We'll look at why your money and status were never really yours, why even your closest relationships aren't possessions, and most importantly, how to find unshakable peace in a world where everything can be lost. We'll also address the tough questions, like whether this philosophy asks us to give up everything that makes life worth living. This isn't just ancient philosophy for philosophy's sake. This is practical wisdom for anyone who's ever had their heart broken, their dreams shattered, or their life turned upside down. It's for anyone who's tired of being jerked around by circumstances beyond their control. It's for you right now, wherever you are on your journey. So, let's dive into these powerful Stoic teachings and discover why losing everything might be the key to gaining the only thing that really matters: true freedom. 1. Why your job, money, and status were never really yours. You're sitting in your corner office, looking at your bank statements, feeling secure. You've worked hard for the six-figure salary, the respect of your colleagues, the house in the suburbs. These achievements define you. They're yours, earned through years of sacrifice and dedication. Then Monday morning comes, and there's an email. We need to talk about restructuring. Within hours, your entire identity crumbles. The job that was yours vanishes. The status you owned evaporates. The security you built reveals itself as an illusion. This scenario plays out thousands of times every day across America. In New York, a Wall Street trader discovers his firm is folding. In Silicon Valley, a startup founder watches her company get acquired and her role eliminated. In Chicago, a factory worker of 20 years learned his plant is moving overseas. Each person believed they owned their position, their income, their professional identity. Epictetus would say they were all wrong. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, Epictetus taught, but in having few wants. But he went even further. He argued that we don't actually possess our wealth at all. We're merely temporary custodians. Think about it. That money in your bank account exists only as numbers on a screen, subject to market crashes, bank failures, lawsuits, or simple theft. Your job exists at the pleasure of your employer, the economy, and countless factors beyond your control. Your professional reputation can be destroyed by a single scandal, whether true or false. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who had everything a person could want, understood this deeply. Despite commanding the most powerful empire on earth, he wrote in his personal journal, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." Here was a man who could have anything, recognizing that external possessions are fundamentally unreliable. Consider what happens when we believe we truly have external success. A marketing executive in Los Angeles builds her entire identity around her role at a prestigious agency. She works 70-hour weeks, sacrifices relationships, and pours everything into climbing the corporate ladder. When the agency loses a major client and conducts layoffs, she doesn't just lose a job, she loses herself. The depression that follows isn't really about money. It's about the collapse of an identity built on sand. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men and a practicing Stoic, had a fascinating practice. Despite his riches, he would regularly spend days living as if he were poor, sleeping on the floor, eating simple food, wearing rough clothes. Why would a millionaire do this? He was training himself to remember that his wealth wasn't truly his. He was preparing mentally for the day it might all disappear, so that if that day came, he wouldn't be destroyed by it. This isn't about becoming lazy or not caring about success. Epictetus wasn't telling people to quit their jobs and live in poverty. The Stoics were often highly successful people, senators, merchants, teachers, even emperors. The difference was in how they held their success. They pursued excellence while remembering that external rewards were never guaranteed and never truly owned. Let me share a modern example. During the 2008 financial crisis, two neighbors in suburban Atlanta faced foreclosure. Both lost homes they'd lived in for over a decade. The first man fell into deep depression. His marriage crumbled, and he spent years bitter about his losses. The second man, who'd been studying Stoic philosophy, faced the same external loss but responded differently. He told his family, "We never really owned that house. We were blessed to live there as long as we did. Now we'll make new memories somewhere else." His family stayed together, and he rebuilt his life with remarkable resilience. What made the difference? The second man understood what Epictetus taught. External things are not ours, but merely on loan from the universe. When you truly grasp this, losing them still hurts, but it doesn't destroy you. You can appreciate success without being enslaved by it. You can work hard for achievement while maintaining the wisdom to know it's temporary. This principle extends beyond just money and career. Your social status, your reputation, even your physical abilities, none of these are truly under your control. An athlete's career can end with one injury. A politician's reputation can be ruined by one scandal. A social media influencer's following can evaporate overnight with a platform change. When we tie our self-worth to these external markers, we hand over our peace of mind to forces beyond our control. The Stoics called this understanding the discipline of desire. It's not about having no desires, but about desiring wisely. Pursue success, but don't let your happiness depend on achieving it. Work hard for promotion, but know that your worth isn't determined by your job title. Build wealth, but remember that true security comes from within, not from your bank balance. Ultimately, recognizing that external success isn't truly ours is liberating. It frees us from the exhausting need to control the uncontrollable. It allows us to engage fully with life while maintaining a healthy detachment from outcomes. When you stop believing you own things that can be taken away, you discover something that can never be lost: your ability to choose how you respond to whatever life brings. 2. The brutal truth about relationships, even your kids. A father in Denver watches his ex-wife drive away with his 2 children after the custody hearing. He gets them every other weekend now. The kids he raised, whose diapers he changed, whose first steps he witnessed legally, they're no longer his in the way he believed they were. His throat tightens as their car disappears around the corner. Everything he thought was permanent, every assumption about his family, shattered by a judge's decision. This is where Stoic philosophy gets really hard to swallow. We can maybe accept that our job isn't truly ours, that money is temporary. But our relationships, our children, our spouse? Surely these are different. Surely love makes something ours forever. Epictetus would shake his head. When you kiss your child goodnight, he taught, whisper to yourself, tomorrow you may die. Harsh? Absolutely. But he wasn't being cruel. He was being honest about the nature of human existence. Before you close this video in disgust, hear me out. The Stoics weren't emotionless robots who didn't love their families. Marcus Aurelius deeply loved his children. His private writings reveal a man who grieved when several of them died young. Seneca adored his wife and wrote beautiful letters about their relationship. These men felt love as deeply as anyone. The difference was they understood a fundamental truth. You cannot possess another human being, no matter how much you love them. Think about what we really mean when we say, my wife, my children, my friends. We're using possessive language about conscious beings with their own will, their own path, their own destiny. A mother in Seattle discovers her teenage daughter has been hiding a drug addiction. But she's my baby, she cries. How could this happen? The shock comes partly from the addiction itself, but also from the shattering of an illusion. The illusion that because someone is ours, we control their choices or their fate. Epictetus, who lived through slavery, understood this better than most. He knew what it meant to be considered someone else's property, and he rejected the entire concept. No human being can truly belong to another. Your spouse chose to be with you today, but that choice is renewed, or not, each day. Your children are individuals who happen to be in your care temporarily. Your parents, siblings, friends, all of them are independent beings whose presence in your life is a gift, not a possession. This becomes painfully clear during divorce. A woman in Miami thought her marriage was solid after 20 years. Then she finds the text messages. Her husband is leaving for someone else. The man she called mine for 2 decades chooses someone else. The future she'd planned, the retirement they'd discussed, the grandchildren they'd imagined gone. not because she failed to possess him hard enough, but because she never possessed him at all. She had a partnership based on mutual choice, and choices can change. But here's where Stoic wisdom becomes profound rather than depressing. When you stop trying to possess people, you can actually love them more freely. A father who understands his children aren't his property can appreciate each moment with them without the desperate need to control their futures. A wife who knows her husband chooses to be with her each day can value that choice instead of taking it for granted. Love without possession is actually stronger because it's based on reality, not an illusion. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this while campaigning far from Rome, missing his family. What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee. He understood that clinging to people, trying to possess them, ultimately harms both parties. The parents who try to control their adult child drives them away. The spouse who becomes possessive creates the very distance they fear. The friend who demands constant loyalty loses the easy companionship they crave. Consider a real example from modern life. Two mothers in Boston face their son's deployment to Afghanistan. The first mother clings desperately, calling daily, sending care packages obsessively, living in constant terror. She says, "My son," as if saying it enough will keep him safe. The second mother, influenced by Stoic teachings, loves just as deeply but holds that love differently. She cherishes each conversation, sends thoughtful packages, but accepts that his fate isn't in her control. When both sons return safely, which mother enjoyed their relationship more during those long months? Which son felt supported rather than suffocated? The Stoics teach that everyone in our lives is on loan from the universe. Your spouse is on loan. Your children are on loan. Your parents, your friends, even your own body, all on loan. This isn't meant to make you paranoid or distant. It's meant to make you grateful. When you realize someone could be gone tomorrow, today becomes precious. When you stop taking relationships for granted as possessions, you start treasuring them as gifts. This perspective radically changes how we handle relationship loss. Whether through death, divorce, or simple growing apart, losing someone hurts. But when you never believe you own them, the grief is cleaner. You mourn the loss of their presence, not the theft of your property. You can feel sadness without the added layer of rage at having something taken that was never yours to keep. The brutal truth is this: every relationship in your life will end. Some will end in death, others in separation, but all will end. Epictetus isn't telling us this to be depressing, but to be free. Free from the illusion of permanent possession. Free to love without clinging. Free to appreciate each moment with the people we love, knowing that moments are all we ever really have. When you stop trying to own people, you can start truly loving them. 3. What you actually control. Spoiler: almost nothing. You wake up tomorrow morning with a plan. Hit the gym, nail that presentation, have a great dinner with your family. By noon, your car won't start, your boss cancels the meeting, and your kid comes home sick from school. Sound familiar? We live under this constant illusion that we're in charge, that we're directing this movie called our life. Epictetus has news for you. You're not the director. You're barely even writing your own dialogue. Here's the fundamental teaching that changed everything. Some things are within our power and some things are not. That's it. Simple, right? But when Epictetus breaks down what's actually in each category, most people feel the ground shift beneath their feet. Because it turns out almost everything you think you control, you don't. Let's start with what you don't control and brace yourself because this list is long. You don't control your body. It ages, gets sick, breaks down despite your best efforts. You don't control other people, not your spouse, not your kids, not your employees. You don't control the economy, the weather, traffic, or whether your flight gets delayed. You don't control your reputation, what others think of you, or whether you get promoted. You don't even control whether you wake up tomorrow morning. A software engineer in San Francisco learns this the hard way. She's brilliant, works out religiously, eats perfectly, schedules every minute. Then at 32, she's diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. Her body, which she thought she controlled through diet and exercise, rebels against her. Her carefully planned life crumbles. She rages against the unfairness until she discovers Stoic philosophy and realizes she was fighting a war she could never win. So, what do you actually control? According to Epictetus, only your judgments, decisions, desires, and responses. That's it. Your opinion about what happens, your choice of how to respond, your decision about what to value, these alone are truly yours. Everything else? It's what Epictetus calls externals. And they're not up to you. This might sound limiting, but Marcus Aurelius saw it as the ultimate power. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Think about what this means. A driver cuts you off in Chicago traffic. You don't control his behavior, but you completely control whether you rage or remain calm. Your company downsizes. You don't control the decision, but you absolutely control whether you see it as a disaster or an opportunity. The Stoics had a brilliant metaphor for this. Imagine you're an archer. You can control how well you maintain your bow, how much you practice, how carefully you aim, and when you release the arrow. But once that arrow leaves your bow, a gust of wind can blow it off course. Your target can move. Someone can walk in front of it. The outcome is not up to you, only the preparation and the attempt. Most of us live backwards. We try desperately to control outcomes while neglecting the few things we actually can control. A parent in Portland tries to control whether her daughter gets into Harvard. She hires tutors, manages schedules, argues with teachers, but she can't control the admissions decision. What she can control, being supportive, providing resources, modeling hard work, gets lost in her anxiety about outcomes. Here's where it gets practical. Every frustration in your life comes from trying to control something outside your power. Stuck in traffic? You're trying to control something external. Angry at your boss? You're attempting to control another person's decisions. Worried about the economy? You're stressing over something completely beyond your influence. The moment you recognize these as outside your control, the frustration begins to dissolve. But don't mistake this for passivity. Epictetus wasn't saying to give up and do nothing. He was teaching focus. When you stop wasting energy on what you can't control, you have tremendous power over what you can. A salesman who stops trying to control whether clients buy and focuses on controlling his presentation, his preparation, and his attitude becomes paradoxically more successful. He's channeling all his energy where it actually makes a difference. Seneca put it brilliantly. Every new thing excites the mind, but a mind that seeks truth turns from the new to the old and finds there is nothing new under the sun. He understood that while external circumstances constantly change, The fundamental choice, how we respond, remains constant and completely under our control. Consider this modern scenario. Two women in Atlanta get diagnosed with the same cancer on the same day. The first woman tries to control everything, researching endlessly, fighting with doctors, raging against the unfairness. She exhausts herself battling what can't be controlled. The second woman, influenced by Stoic principles, focuses on what she can control, following treatment protocols, maintaining her attitude, choosing how to spend whatever time she has. Both face the same external challenge, but their internal experiences are completely different. The dichotomy of control isn't just philosophy, it's practical psychology. When you truly internalize what you do and don't control, anxiety decreases dramatically. Why worry about things outside your power? It's like worrying about whether the sun will rise. When you focus only on what you control, your thoughts, judgments, and choices, you discover a realm where you're absolutely sovereign. This is what Epictetus meant by freedom. Not political freedom or financial freedom, but the freedom that comes from focusing your energy only where you have real power. When you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you stop being controlled by it. The traffic jam loses its power to ruin your day. The difficult boss can't destroy your peace. Even loss and death, while still painful, can't touch the core of who you are, the part that chooses how to respond. The truth is both terrifying and liberating. You control almost nothing except how you think and what you choose. But that almost nothing is everything that matters. For how to stop being life's puppet. Lady Fortuna sits in her celestial palace, pulling strings. Down below, a businessman in Manhattan jumps for joy. His startup just got funded. Across town, another entrepreneur slumps in despair. His company just went bankrupt. Both men dance to her tune, their emotions completely dependent on her whims. She smiles, knowing that tomorrow she'll reverse their fortunes just for entertainment. This is how most of us live, as puppets, with invisible strings attached to everything outside our control. Epictetus saw this clearly. Whoever then wishes to be free, let him neither wish for anything nor flee from anything that depends on others. Otherwise, he must be a slave. Every time you let your happiness depend on external events, you hand someone or something the strings to control you. Your boss controls your mood with a performance review. Your ex controls your peace with a text message. The stock market controls your sleep with its fluctuations. You've become a marionette, dancing to rhythms you didn't choose. Think about your last truly terrible day. What made it terrible? Someone criticized you. Plans fell through. You lost money? Notice how every source of misery came from something external pulling your strings. Now think about your last amazing day. Did you get praise? Did something go your way? Did you receive good news? Again, external events pulling different strings, making you dance to a happier tune. But you're still dancing to someone else's music. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, understood this slavery. How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself. Even as emperor, he recognized that depending on others' actions or opinions for his well-being would make him a slave. The irony is striking. The man who could command legions knew that true power came from cutting the puppet strings, not from pulling them. Here's how the strings work in modern life. A woman in Seattle checks Instagram, and sees her college friends living seemingly perfect lives. String pulled, she feels inadequate. Her post gets fewer likes than expected. Another string, she questions her worth. Her ex posts photos with his new girlfriend. Strongest string yet, her entire day crumbles. She's not living her life. She's reacting to everyone else's. Social media has given Lady Fortuna millions of new strings to pull. But cutting these strings isn't about becoming indifferent or emotionless. Seneca loved wine, enjoyed his wealth, and cherished his friends. The difference? He held these pleasures lightly. Every new thing excites the mind, he wrote. But a mind that seeks truth turns from the new to the old. He enjoyed good fortune when it came but didn't depend on it. When Lady Fortuna gave, he accepted graciously. When she took away, he let go without resistance. The strings were cut. The process starts with recognition. A real estate agent in Phoenix notices his pattern. When sales are good, he's euphoric, spending lavishly, feeling invincible. When sales slow, he's depressed, anxious, snapping at his family. His entire emotional life depends on something he doesn't control. Whether people decide to buy houses. He's a puppet to the housing market. Recognizing this is the first step to freedom. Next comes the harder part, consciously cutting strings. This doesn't mean not caring about outcomes. It means not letting outcomes control your inner state. The Stoics called this reserve clause, adding a mental asterisk to every plan. I will close this deal if fate allows. I will have a great vacation if circumstances permit. My relationship will work out if it's meant to be. This isn't pessimism. It's freedom from disappointment when things don't go as planned. Consider two entrepreneurs in Austin launching similar startups. The first ties his entire identity to success. Every setback devastates him. Every small victory sends him soaring. He's exhausted from the emotional roller coaster, and his decision-making suffers from these extremes. The second practices Stoic principles. She works just as hard but maintains what Epictetus called discipline of desire. She prefers success but accepts whatever comes. When challenges arise, she responds calmly. When victories come, she enjoys them without attachment. Guess which company ultimately thrives? The ancient Stoics had specific practices for cutting strings. Morning reflection. Remind yourself that everything external is not yours. Evening review. Examine where you let externals control your emotions today. Negative visualization. Imagine losing what you value to appreciate it without clinging. Voluntary discomfort. Occasionally go without pleasure to prove you don't need them. These aren't exercises in masochism but in freedom. Modern psychology confirms what Stoics knew intuitively. Studies show that people with an internal locus of control, who believe they control their own lives, are happier, healthier, and more successful than those with an external locus of control, who believe life happens to them. The Stoics were teaching cognitive behavioral therapy 2,000 years before it had a name. But here's the paradox. When you stop being life's puppet, you often get more of what you previously craved. The salesman who stops desperately needing each sale often sells more. The person who stops clinging to relationships often finds deeper connections. The entrepreneur who can accept failure typically achieves greater success. When you cut the strings of need, you're free to act from strength rather than desperation. This isn't about becoming passive or giving up on goals. It's about pursuing them from a place of power rather than dependency. You still work hard, still care about outcomes, still prefer success to failure. But your well-being no longer depends on results. You've cut the strings that made you dance to external music. You've stopped being life's puppet and started being your own master. As Epictetus taught, this is the only real freedom available to human beings, and it's available to everyone right now, regardless of circumstances. 5. When letting go feels like giving up. So, you're telling me to just accept that my wife cheated on me? Should I be fine with losing my kids? That's not philosophy. That's giving up. The man's voice cracks with anger and pain as he confronts the Stoic teachings. His fists clench as he continues. Where's the justice in that? Why should I be the one who has to accept everything while the people who wronged me get away with it? This is the moment where most people reject Stoicism entirely. Because let's be honest, when Epictetus tells us to accept what happens with contentment, when he says our wife and children were never ours to begin with, something inside us rebels. Feels wrong. It feels like we're being asked to be doormats, to roll over and let life kick us without fighting back. It feels like giving up on everything that matters. A teacher in Baltimore faces this exact dilemma. Her principal, known for playing favorites, passes her over for department chair despite her superior qualifications. The position goes to someone who barely shows up but happens to golf with the principal on weekends. When she discovers Stoicism and reads about accepting what happens, her first reaction is disgust. So I should just accept corruption? Should I be okay with injustice? That's exactly what allows bad people to win. Here's where we need to understand what Stoicism is actually saying, because it's not what most people think. Epictetus is never said to be passive. He never said not to fight for what's right. He never said to enable bad behavior or accept injustice in society. What he said was far more nuanced. Recognize what you control and what you don't, then act accordingly. Marcus Aurelius faced this tension constantly. As emperor, he dealt with corrupt senators, rebellious generals, and an ungrateful public. Did he just shrug and accept everything? Absolutely not. He fought wars, reformed laws, and worked tirelessly for justice. But, and this is crucial, he did so while accepting that the outcomes weren't entirely in his control. He could control his own actions, his own integrity, his own efforts. The results? Those belong to fate. The distinction is subtle but life-changing. When that teacher in Baltimore learns this, her approach shifts. She still documents the corruption, still files a complaint, still fights for fairness. But she does so without letting the outcome destroy her peace. She controls what she can, her actions, her integrity, her response. Whether justice prevails, that's not up to her. This isn't giving up. It's fighting from a place of strength rather than desperation. Seneca dealt with this personally when Nero, the emperor he advised, became increasingly unstable and cruel. Should Seneca just accept Nero's behavior? Should he enable a tyrant? No. He tried to guide Nero toward wisdom, attempted to minimize damage, and eventually withdrew from court when he could no longer serve honorably. He took action within his sphere of control while accepting he couldn't control Nero's choices. When Nero eventually ordered his death, Seneca accepted even that with dignity, not because he was passive, but because he'd already done everything within his power. Consider a modern parallel. A woman in Denver discovers her business partner has been embezzling funds. The Stoic approach isn't to shrug and say, "Oh well, I never really owned that money anyway." The Stoic approach is to take every appropriate action, legal proceedings, asset protection, rebuilding the business, while maintaining inner equilibrium regardless of outcomes. She fights hard but doesn't let the fight consume her. She seeks justice but doesn't depend on achieving it for her peace of mind. This is what Epictetus meant by the discipline of action. You act according to virtue and wisdom, but you act with what the Stoics called a reserve clause, an understanding that results aren't guaranteed. You fight the good fight while accepting you might lose. You stand up for what's right while knowing you might be knocked down. You love deeply while understanding loss is always possible. The mother whose ex-husband got custody of her children doesn't just accept it passively. She fights for fair visitation, maintains her relationship with her kids, and works to be the best mother possible within her constraints. But she does this without letting bitterness poison her life. She acts wherever she can while accepting what she cannot change. This isn't giving up on her children. It's refusing to give up on her own well-being while fighting for theirs. Here's what happens when you mistake Stoic acceptance for passive resignation. Nothing. You become bitter, cynical, disconnected. But here's what happens when you understand true Stoic acceptance. You become unstoppable. Because when you're not wasting energy raging against what you can't control, you have tremendous power to affect what you can. When you're not paralyzed by the fear of outcomes, you're free to act boldly. A contractor in Houston gets stiffed on a major project. 6 months of work. No payment. The client has better lawyers and deeper pockets. Does the contractor just accept this injustice? No. He pursues legal remedies, warns other contractors, adjusts his business practices to prevent future problems. But he does all this without letting rage consume him, without letting one bad client destroy his love for his craft. He accepts what happened while taking every appropriate action in response. The real test comes when you've done everything right and are still lost. When you fought for your marriage but your spouse still left. When you gave your job everything but still got laid off. When you raised your kids well, but they still made terrible choices. This is when Stoicism asks the hardest question. Can you accept this outcome without bitterness while continuing to live according to your values? Because here's the truth. Letting go of outcomes isn't giving up. It's the only way to keep going. When you require specific results to be okay, you're fragile. When you can accept any outcome while maintaining your principles, you're invincible. Not invincible in the sense that you always win, but invincible in the sense that nothing can break your spirit or compromise your character. As Epictetus taught, this is the only victory that truly matters, and it's the one victory completely within your control. 6. The price of inner peace. Is it worth it? A man stands in a garden at sunset, completely at peace. His wife left him last year, his business failed, his health is declining. Yet he smiles, genuinely content. His neighbor watches from across the fence, disturbed. "How can you be so calm?" the neighbor asks. "Don't you care about anything anymore?" The man considers this. "I care," he says quietly. "I just don't require things to go my way to be at peace." The neighbor shakes his head and walks away, muttering about giving up on life. This is the challenge that haunts Stoicism. If we truly accept everything, If we let go of attachments, if we stop needing external things to be happy, what's left? Are we still human? Or have we traded our humanity for a kind of philosophical numbness? The ancient critics of Stoicism raised this same objection. They argued that Stoics, in their quest for inner peace, had to sacrifice everything that makes life vibrant, passionate, worth living. Consider what Stoicism seems to ask us to give up. That rush of joy when your child wins their soccer game. Dangerous, you're attached to an external outcome. The deep satisfaction of building a successful business? Risky. You're depending on things beyond your control. The butterflies of new love? A trap. You're making your happiness contingent on another person. Follow this logic far enough, and it seems like Stoicism wants us to feel nothing, want nothing, care about nothing. A woman in Portland wrestles with this exact dilemma. After her divorce, she discovered Stoicism and found genuine peace for the first time in years. But now her friends worry about her. She doesn't get excited about her promotion. She seems unmoved by her daughter's acceptance to Yale. She dates, but without the desperate need to find the one. Her therapist asks if she's depressed. She's not. She's just no longer riding the emotional roller coaster. But is this really living? Marcus Aurelius faced this criticism even in his own time. Here was an emperor who could have any pleasure, any luxury, any experience. Yet he chose philosophical discipline. His detractors whispered that he was cold, that he didn't truly enjoy life. But read his private journals and you find something different. He deeply loved his wife, grieved his children's deaths, found joy in simple pleasures. The difference? He held these experiences lightly, ready to let them go when fate demanded. The critics have a point, though. There's something in the human spirit that rebels against Stoic detachment. We want to care desperately, love madly, fight fiercely for what matters. The thought of approaching life with philosophical calm feels like betrayal of our deepest instincts. What's the point of falling in love if you're simultaneously preparing for loss? Why have children if you're constantly reminding yourself they're mortal? Why build anything if you're already accepting its eventual destruction? Seneca understood this tension perfectly. Despite being a Stoic, he lived luxuriously, enjoyed the finest wines, wrote passionate letters to his wife. Critics called him a hypocrite, but Seneca saw no contradiction. Every new thing excites the mind, he acknowledged. The key was to enjoy fully while holding lightly. He could savor expensive wine while knowing he'd be equally content with water. He could love his wealth while being prepared to lose it without despair. But let's be honest about the price. An entrepreneur in Miami built his company from nothing to a $50 million valuation. The day it went public should have been the happiest of his life. Instead, influenced by Stoic teachings, he felt calm, pleasant satisfaction, yes, but not the explosive joy he'd imagined for 20 years. His business partner celebrated with champagne and tears. Our entrepreneur smiled quietly and went home to his regular evening routine. Did philosophy rob him of a peak life experience? Here's where we need to confront the real question. What exactly is inner peace worth? If the price is less joy, is it worth paying? If the cost is caring less deeply, is that a bargain we should make? The Stoics would say we're asking the wrong question. It's not about feeling less, it's about feeling differently. Not about caring less, but about caring more wisely. Think about two fathers watching their daughters get married. The first is overwhelmed with joy, but also terrified. What if the marriage fails? What if his daughter moves far away? What if something happens to her? His happiness is shot through with anxiety. The second father, influenced by Stoicism, feels profound joy without the desperate clinging. He's fully present, deeply moved, but not dependent on specific outcomes for his continued well-being. Which father actually experiences the moment more fully? The price of inner peace isn't numbness. It's the death of desperation. You still feel joy, but not the manic high that comes from getting what you desperately need. You still feel sadness, but not the crushing despair that comes from losing what you can't live without. You still love deeply, but without the possessive anxiety that poisons so many relationships. You trade the highest highs and lowest lows for something more sustainable, a deep contentment that external events can't destroy. A nurse in Chicago puts it perfectly. Before Stoicism, my life was like being on cocaine. Incredible highs followed by devastating crashes. Now it's more like a steady warmth. I miss the rush sometimes, but I don't miss the crashes at all. And honestly, I actually experience more genuine joy now because I'm not constantly afraid of losing it. So, is inner peace worth its price? That depends on what you value more. Intensity or sustainability, peaks or consistency, the thrill of the roller coaster or the satisfaction of solid ground. The Stoics made their choice clear. They believed that true happiness couldn't depend on externals because externals are unreliable. They chose a joy that no one could take away over a joy that anyone could destroy. Ultimately, each person must decide, is a life of philosophical peace worth giving up the desperate attachments that make us feel most alive? Or perhaps the better question is, were those desperate attachments really making us feel alive, or were they just making us feel? 7. Ancient wisdom for modern heartbreak. Your phone buzzes at 2 a.m. It's the text you've been dreading. We need to talk. I've met someone else. Your world implodes in the darkness of your bedroom. 21st century heartbreak delivered through a glowing screen. But the pain is as old as humanity itself. What would Epictetus say to you at this moment? What wisdom could a former slave from 2,000 years ago possibly offer for your modern devastation? More than you might think. Because while technology changes, the human heart doesn't. The Roman senator discovering his wife's affair felt the same gut punch you feel now. The merchant in ancient Athens watching his business fail experienced the same desperation as today's entrepreneur. The mother in Nero's Rome losing her child to disease grieved just as deeply as any parent today. Stoics understood something profound. Human suffering is universal, and so is the path through it. Let's start with the immediate crisis. You've just been dumped, fired, diagnosed, or betrayed. Your body is flooded with stress hormones. Your mind races through scenarios. Sleeping is impossible. Epictetus would first remind you of a simple but powerful truth. This feeling will pass. Not the event that's happened, but is this intense, unbearable feeling? Is temporary. When you are imagining some object of desire, he taught, apply this thought. You are imagining a thing which is not permanent. Marcus Aurelius had practice for moments of acute pain. He would zoom out mentally, seeing his life from a cosmic perspective. Remember that in a little while you and everyone you know will be dead, he wrote. not to be morbid, but to gain perspective. Your devastating breakup, viewed from the perspective of eternity, becomes one small chapter in one small life on one small planet. This doesn't minimize your pain, but it contains it. It's not the end of everything, just the end of something. But philosophy is useless if it stays abstract. So here's the practical Stoic approach to modern heartbreak. First, accept reality. Your partner left. The job is gone. The diagnosis is real. Fighting reality only adds suffering to pain. A woman in Brooklyn spent 6 months after her divorce insisting it wasn't really happening, that her husband would come back. Only when she finally accepted the truth could healing begin. Acceptance isn't approval. It's just acknowledging what is. Second, separate what happened from your story about what happened. Your partner left, that's what happened. I'm unlovable and will die alone. That's your story. You lost your job, that's the event. I'm a failure who'll never succeed. That's your narrative. Epictetus taught that we're disturbed not by events themselves, but by our judgments about events. Change the story, change the suffering. Here's a modern exercise based on ancient wisdom. Write down what happened in purely factual terms. John sent a text ending our 5-year relationship. Then write your story about it. John destroyed my life and stole my future. See the difference? The first is what happened. The second is the optional suffering you're adding. You can't change the first. You have complete control over the second. Third, focus on what you control right now. Not next year, not next month, not even tomorrow. Right now. You control whether you eat something healthy or binge on ice cream. You control whether you call a friend or isolate. You control whether you go for a walk or stay in bed. You control whether you speak kindly to yourself or engage in brutal self-criticism. These seem like small things, but they're everything. They're your power. Seneca, who experienced exile, loss of fortune, and eventually forced suicide, developed specific practices for difficult times. Morning reflection. What could go wrong today, and how will I handle it? This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. Evening review. What did I handle well today? Where can I improve tomorrow? This builds resilience incrementally. Voluntary hardship. Skipping a meal, sleeping on the floor, taking a cold shower. This proves you're stronger than you think. A tech worker in San Francisco applies these principles after being laid off from his dream job. Morning reflection. I might face rejection today. I'll respond with dignity. Evening review. I sent 5 applications and networked with 2 contacts. Tomorrow I'll do 6 and 3. Voluntary hardship. He lives on minimal expenses, proving he can survive on less. Within 3 months, he has a better position. More importantly, he's no longer terrified of job loss. The Stoics also understood that healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel strong, other days you'll cry in your car. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world, wrote about his own struggles with despair. The goal isn't to never feel pain. It's to move through pain without being destroyed by it. It's to grieve without despair, to feel anger without being consumed, to experience fear without being paralyzed. Modern therapy often echoes ancient Stoic practices. Cognitive behavioral therapy is essentially Epictetus with clipboards. Mindfulness meditation is Marcus Aurelius's self-reflection with guided audio. The Stoics were pioneering psychological techniques we now consider cutting edge. They understood that changing your thoughts changes your experience, that accepting reality reduces suffering, that focusing on what you control increases agency. Here's the ultimate Stoic response to modern heartbreak. Use it. Every loss is a teacher. Every pain is a doorway to wisdom. Every ending is practice for the ultimate ending we all face. The Stoics called this the discipline of desire, learning to want what happens, because what happens is your curriculum for growth. Your heartbreak isn't a detour from your life path. It is your path, perfectly designed to teach you exactly what you need to learn. As you lie in bed tonight, processing your loss, remember that you're joining an ancient fellowship of human beings who've faced devastation and found wisdom. The tools they developed over centuries are yours to use. You can't control what happened to you, but you absolutely control who you become because of it. And that, as Epictetus would say, is the only thing that truly matters. Your choice, peace or passion. So here we are at the crossroads. You've heard what the Stoics offer. A life where nothing external can destroy your peace, where loss doesn't devastate you, where you're free from the puppet strings of circumstance. You've also heard the price. Letting go of the desperate attachments that make life feel electric, accepting that nothing you love is truly yours, finding contentment in a world where everything disappears. The question facing you isn't academic, it's deeply personal. Will you choose the Stoic path of inner peace, or will you embrace the passionate, attached, vulnerable life that most of us instinctively live? There's no universally right answer, but there is a right answer for you right now in whatever circumstances you face. Maybe you're reading this in the ruins of a relationship, and the idea of never being devastated again sounds like salvation. Maybe you're at the peak of success, and the thought of holding it all lightly feels like betrayal of your ambitions. Maybe you're somewhere in between, tired of the emotional roller coaster but not ready to get off completely. Wherever you are, the Stoics have something to offer, even if you don't buy the whole package. Because here's what 2,000 years of human experience has taught us. You don't have to be a perfect Stoic to benefit from Stoic wisdom. You can practice the dichotomy of control when anxiety strikes without becoming completely detached. You can use negative visualization to appreciate what you have without constantly preparing for loss. You can develop resilience through voluntary hardship without sleeping on the floor every night. Marcus Aurelius himself struggled with complete Stoic detachment. Seneca enjoyed his wealth while preaching simplicity. Even Epictetus, the hardest of hardcore Stoics, showed flashes of very human emotion. They weren't trying to become robots. They were trying to become free. Free from the tyranny of external events. Free from the slavery of desperate need. Free to choose their response to whatever life brought. That freedom is available to you right now. Not in some distant future when you've mastered philosophy, but in this moment. You can choose to see your current struggle as a teacher rather than a tormentor. You can decide that your peace of mind matters more than getting what you want. You can recognize that everyone and everything you love is temporary and choose to love them anyway. Maybe even more deeply because of it. The Stoics believed that philosophy wasn't about theory but about practice. It wasn't about perfect understanding but about daily application. Every time you catch yourself trying to control the uncontrollable and redirect that energy to what you actually influence, you're practicing Stoicism. Every time you accept an outcome while maintaining your principles, you're living these teachings. Your journey with Stoic philosophy starts with a single question. What in my life am I trying to control that isn't actually up to me? Your answer might change everything. If these ideas resonated with you, if you're ready to explore practical Stoicism further, I invite you to subscribe to Stoic Vivu. Like this video if it helped you see your struggles differently. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not powerless, just focused on the wrong kind of power. Remember, you can't control what happens to you, but you're completely in charge of who you become because of it.